All right. All right. I have to edit this, but welcome, fellow druids, to another episode of Full Circle. Today I'm going to talk about the Warpborn Skinwalkers, and that will include their command attachment. I'm not going to say this for every episode, but I'm going to start recording smaller snippet episodes. Sometimes those will be private ahead of time, and so that I can stagger when they're posted. Other times we'll go live. I may try to do the full show, scheduled ahead of time sometimes too. But for now, trying out some new stuff. So it lets me record a few things ahead of time so that I can do it a little bit more conveniently for me when my schedule allows. So today, the Skinwalkers. So we're gonna read it out, and then we'll talk about them a little bit. So Warpborn Skinwalkers are a Circle Wolfswarm unit. They are speed 5. They are strength 8, mat 6. Don't matter about the rat. Defense 12, armor 16, command 7. They have a weapon which is a 2-inch range, POW 4, power and strength 12, pole axe. The unit contains 3 or 5 members, all of whom who have 8 wounds. And the cost for the minimum unit is 9 points. The full unit is 15 points. They are field allowance 2. And additionally, they have hyper regeneration, which allows them to remove D3 damage points from each model at the start of its activation. They have Relentless Charge, which is while advancing as part of a charge, they gain Pathfinder, and Unyielding, which currently says while engaging an enemy model, this model gains +2 armor. This change hasn't gone through. We'll talk about it when it does, but there is a change in CID that has not gone live. It's part of the Crix CID unless they revert it, which will say which could change this to say Unyielding gives +2 armor against melee attacks. So slight difference there. I think it's a good change overall for the game, so we won't belabor that too much. And then just to go over the command attachment all at once here, it's the Warpborn Skinwalker Alpha. He has all of the same stats except his command, which is 9. Also medium base. He's also mat 7 instead of 6. He has 8 wounds. He's 4 points and FA 2, so you can have 1 on each of your units. He also has hyper regeneration, relentless charge, and unyielding. Additionally, he adds gang, tactics gang, so even if he dies, it stays. And if you don't recall what gang does, is when making a melee attack targeting an enemy model in the melee range of another model in the unit, a model with gang gains +2 to attack and melee attack and melee damage rolls. And then additionally, he has Night Howls, which is a mini feat. Once per game at any time during its unit's activation, this model can use Night Howls. For 1 round, enemy models cannot cast spells or give or receive orders while within 3 inches of a model in this unit that is in formation. Okay, so that's what the Skinwalkers are. And then what they do. So to talk a little bit about what they are. So they're medium-based infantry. So you're looking at multi-wound infantry. So we've talked about Ravagers in the past. Skinwalkers I would put as the more survivable unit of the multi medium-based variety that we have. 12-16 is sort of very similar to 13-15. You would think you're sort of like trading a point of armor for defense, and then the Ravagers have tough, but these guys have 3 more wounds. They also have, but they are slower, and they have the hyper regeneration. So that means these guys are going to be a pretty tanky unit, to be totally honest. You need to remember all the rules. Caveat: I have not played them much. Primarily I've just been focusing a lot on Devourer's Host primarily. I also don't have a unit that's painted right now, and they're pretty complex models. So there's only so many things that can be painted all at once. So that's part of the reason too. And that sort of helps me focus. But But where I see them being the piece to play really is where you can take advantage of the fact that they're going to be in melee and very hard to remove, and they're going to be healing themselves, thus making them even harder to remove. And you even have options to bring additional healing for them in the form of shifting stones, especially now that it's a 2-inch range on it. So you pretty easily can, with position on the healing on the shifting stones for healing static, you realistically could heal every model in the unit. So I mean, then now they're healing 2d3 a turn, and they can be 12. There's 12-16 base, which is a decent stat line. They go up to 12-18 just by being in melee. Now you're talking about a significant stat line, especially when you add in those multiple wounds. And then, you know, and things like you're gonna not want to shoot into them because of things like, you know, firing into melee and stuff, and you can provide concealment for them. So anyways, with a little bit of work, you can make them pretty survivable. Additionally, any caster that brings an armor buff is absolutely going to be a very strong option for them. Going from, you know, assume we're stuck in melee again, like going from armor 18 to armor 20 is a very significant jump. You've basically all but invalidated a lot of POW 10 stuff. If you can keep charges off of them, even better. Things like that. They're going to be very survivable. They're a very solid unit with that. Another thing that's worth noting is with Gang, they are the unit that hits the hardest in melee of anything that we have. They don't get a lot of attacks doing it. They don't get a lot of threat range for doing it. They threat natively 10 inches. But they are going to be Mat 8, POW 14 as long as you can get Gang off. Now, obviously, a Ravager is always Mat 7 and always POW 13, and a lot of times people want to just do the math and assume that you always can get Gang, or you can always get whatever buff that is available. That's not really how that works. So don't just assume that means they're always on, but it does mean that natively they do have the best the best chance of sorry about that, the best chance of staying hitting the hardest and staying alive. So but their threat range is obviously very mediocre. Also worth noting, and this is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, but it is what it is. This is the only unit Circle has that does not flat out have native Pathfinder. They have Relentless Charge. So that means they do have Pathfinder if they charge, and that doesn't mean they get the order to charge. They have to actually charge. They have Pathfinder when you do that. So you're safe to like put them behind a wall if you think you're going to be charging with them. However, if you're planning to do anything else with them, just keep in mind their positioning is going to matter. I don't know why this was a choice. I mean, I have some ideas about, they used to have a rule called Relentless Advance, and they wanted them to have something that still was relentless. That's a rule in the game. They're like, well, this will fit, and then we can buff them in another, you know, they felt like they buffed them in another way. You know, we'll see if they go into a cycle at some point. I'm going to personally recommend that they just get Pathfinder because I think that's part of Circle's identity. But either way, I don't think it's a huge deal. It's more of a fluffy thing to me than a, you know, deal breaker type thing. So anyways, so Skinwalkers are very tanky. They hit decently hard, but they are a little bit slower. I think any amount of buffs that you can put on them are going to be great, and anything that will help deliver them into melee is going to be fantastic. So things that can do that include Occultation, which we have on Kaya. Grail can give them stealth. Grail has some other ways of stopping guns. Vengeance from Grail is great on them because now that threat range issue I was talking about is a little bit mitigated. Mirage could be interesting on them. I've never actually played a caster that tried to do that, but could be. You have the armor spells, like I said. Chromac 1 has an armor +2 armor spell. Morvana 1 has a +2 armor spell. Balder 1 has a +2 armor spell, though it's slowing their speed down even more, so you got to be careful when you want to cast that. Balder 1's feat also helping you get the alpha and giving them cover is fantastic. Grail's feat to give them stealth. Kruger 2 potentially for Windstorm to help protect them from some guns. Kruger 1 with Gale Winds to help. That makes some defense 15. That's not nothing for sure. Morvana 2 and Kaya 3 both have Fog of Aura, though I think Morvana 2 is the better of the two of those to be discussing with them, because she focuses a little more on units. I'm missing one buff somewhere. I mentioned Mirage, Una 2, and Mosar have that. Wormwood's Feet potentially can also protect them, and so forth. So that's kind of where they're at, and I think that they can do okay too when they don't have any protection, more so than like Ravagers, who I think with the lower armor, the defense that's higher but not that much higher, and less wounds, are a little more reliant on tough. Where these guys, just by virtue of what they are pretty survivable. Like, you're in a position now where even at armor 16 with 8 wounds, you're dice off 6 against like any POW 10 shooting. So if you think about it, they're gonna on average do like 1 or 2 damage each, but that means that you're easily within range of like a spike on a Ravager causing a tough check, especially with it only being dice off 5. And with these guys, you're in the range where you're gonna have to shoot like one guy with 4 POW 10s. And even with POW 12s, your dice off 4, on average they're going to do about 3-4 damage, and that means, pardon me, that it's going to take 2 to take down a model, and that's assuming that they're a little bit above average. So even at armor 16, they're getting there. At armor 18, it's great, and then at armor 20 when they're stuck in it, and you're really happy about that. The mini feat on the Alpha is very interesting in that the 3 inches makes it very difficult to position for anybody who is not Morvana 2. I'll come back to that in a second. But it potentially is very impactful, right? Not being able to cast spells is really going to potentially hamper, and I'm just double checking the wording on the ability. Can I cast spells? So the give or receive orders is sort of gonna be, I mean, if you're within 3 inches or less, they were going to have trouble charging you anyways. And I guess you can stop them from charging away from you, but you have 2-inch melee, so that ability is okay. It will stop things like Shield Wall, which is not irrelevant at all. Again, it's going to sort of mess with their order of activations, which I think is stronger than it looks on paper. It's the same thing with the casting spells, right? You put one, if you can manage to get one Skinwalker to an awkward place with their caster where they need to cast a spell, now they're going to have to figure out something to activate to kill that guy. And as we just talked about, they're not the easiest thing in the world to kill by any means. So I think there's some potential to really mess with your opponent's activations. I think Grail and Morvana 2 are probably the best situated to abuse that. Grail, because I mentioned the Vengeance spell, plus his feet gives an additional 3-inch move after a model is killed, so you can kind of get them in some pretty interesting positions, I would say. I think Morvana 2, because she can feat, you know, maybe 4 or 5 of the, you know, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the models in the unit, in each unit, are killed. Well, now you can, if you take 2, which is probably not a terrible idea with her, if you took 2, and then you can put them back in play in whatever spots you want, and now you've got just a mess on the table of 8 wound models that are in melee, and you're not casting any spells, you're not giving any orders until you dig all that out. So I like that potential. I think that's interesting, but I wouldn't rely too much on the mini feat. I think you're going to want to be looking at this unit as a good roadblock that that you can use that with sometimes. So they hit decently hard. They're a little bit slower. You're going to want to deliver them. Once you deliver, you should be more sustainable throughout the fight. They're good. They're only available in the Wild Hunt theme force, so I would look to play it with them in there, which is good. There's other synergies with Wolfsworn that are relevant. Morag, Grail, Warwolves, all very relevant to their plans. I think anybody who plays well in that theme is somebody you want to consider playing them with. I mentioned a few of them. Basically, any of our slightly more infantry focused casters, and then some people do have like them with like Chromac 1 and such. So anyways, that is Skinwalkers. Try to give them a go when you get a chance. I think they're a pretty good unit. It's taken me this long to even bring them to talk about them in full circle, just because I haven't really had a chance to play them yet. So, but yeah, that's all for Skinwalkers. So, thanks for watching.